Oh, welcome in to another episode of Hockey Royalty Live, the official podcast of hockeyroyalty.com. Tonight we got episode 188. Turcotte, for the lack of a better word, is good. Our boy had a big game last night. We're going to be breaking down the deets, doing a little bit of coast to coast. And you know what? I'm going to be busting out the old tinfoil hat tonight. So get in the chat, like and subscribe. Let's go. As always, that intro is brought to you by Ezera, the new song Blind out now, anywhere you want to listen to music. But our boys are here. We're ready to go. Russ, Joe, how you guys doing?
Oh, Russell's muted. Well, way to start the show.
Boo.
Oh, man. All right, we're back. Let's start over. I'm doing good. How you guys doing?
Good. It's been a busy last 7-8 days or so for.
Oh, you had your hockey tournament. How'd that go?
It was good. Yeah, we got a chance to go to Lake Placid. I love going there. It's a nice small little town. It's always, whenever we walk through there, it's always crazy to think like, man, what the Olympics that happened there. The town is so small to think of that many people that were there. It's just crazy. But I love going there. Played 2 games, won 2 games. Had some good fun times with the fellas. So bus trip was good. So it was good. It was good. We had a game since then. We got a game tomorrow. So it's busy times right now. That's for sure. So, but it's all right. It's good stuff.
It's going good. I know all you LA Dodger fans got Sasaki. Well, the Dodgers need 15 starting pitchers, and I think they got the full 15 stable. Each pitcher is going to start once a month, and so that's all they're going to need. But
like, Thanos in his gauntlet right now, collecting all my stuff.
It's the Dodgers are inevitable. Yeah. So, but we're going to be getting into the Kings tonight, as well as some around the coast to coast, and then everybody's favorite segment at the end, talking some potential trades at the deadline. But let's break into the game. Kings take a beat down to Vancouver. The game seemed over early, but we'll break into it. Our boy, the man, the myth, the legend, the podcast title screen there, Alex Turcotte, having a big game, 2 goals and an assist. Really seems to be buzzing with that first line. I know we've mentioned that on a couple podcasts, but buzzing for 2 games, 3 games is one thing. Buzzing for multiple weeks is an entirely different thing. I'll start with you, Joe. I mean, what does he bring to that line that makes them so consistent, and where is he finding his game this season?
I think for me, so much of it is, well, obviously, he's healthy. That's the most obvious and the biggest thing, because I think he's always shown the knack to be a creative player when he's been on the ice, but he hasn't always been on the ice. For me, I think it's so much to do to play with Kopitar, especially, and I'll include Kempe, but especially Kopitar. You got to have a brain, and I think Alex Turcotte's kind of hockey IQ, if you will, is really impressive to me. He knows what his role is. He knows where he's got to go. He knows what to do without the puck. He goes to spaces. He's good, and he's creative enough with the puck. Like, he's a really good playmaker. It's never like an issue in terms of talent. It's can he play, and where can he play, and can he play with higher end players? And I think because of his brain, it allows him to. Like, obviously, he's always been somebody that is talented enough, and he's showing that he's capable enough between the ears to play with those guys, and he's been a really good compliment.
Yeah, it seems like every line that Alex Turcotte has been on has been able to elevate their play. I mean, we talked about at the beginning of the year, it was Turcotte, Lefebvre, or Fogle that was just humming along. and now we kind of got him on the top line with Kopitar and Kempe, and every time he kind of seems like the team's kind of in a rut, or just, I mean, they'd only lost the 2 games in Calgary and Edmonton. Alex Turcotte seems to come up in the big moments, and I feel like that's the type of player he is. Like Joe said, he knows his role and he plays it well. He's not trying to do too much. He knows he's playing with some elite level talent in Kopitar and Kempe, who are on almost a point per game pace on the season, and he's going out there and making just simple plays happen. I mean, that goal to set up Adrian Kempe with the stick lift, I think it was Darnay, like going up against that massive player compared to relative to his size, stick lift, throwing the puck right to the middle, right in front of the net. Kempe's right there, tucks it home. I mean, that type of play is like, okay, like this is a player that he's kind of just getting started, right? It's only his first full NHL season, and he's still got 19 points in the 37 games. I mean, it's been great, and you can only just see, like, if he can just, that's been the key, right? Just stay healthy. If he can stay healthy, I mean, there's a legitimate top 6 player here in the near future, maybe in for the rest of his career. So it's been good to see. Hope we can continue this. And then, I mean, it bodes well. What was the theme coming into the season? Where the young players have to play well. And so far, I mean, he's one of the key factors for that theme so far in the season.
It was, I think 2 games ago or 3 games ago, they put up a graphic and the Kings were second in the National Hockey League for points by players under the age of 23, only behind Buffalo. So they're getting plenty of young gunned this season. Turcotte's helping. Obviously, Brant Clark is helping. Alex Laferriere. So they're getting plenty of help from that. And Dave O comes in here, says Turk is signed for another 2 seasons after this one for $775. This contract could turn him out to be a massive steal. I think it already is. I mean, if he just plays this at this level, it's a steal. If he elevates his game to another level, you're talking about ungodly value for the LA Kings.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, hopefully he does. I mean, it's just been health. Like I've always thought the kid can play. I didn't know what that meant. Like I don't know if that meant he's a top line player. I don't know if that meant he's a middle 6 player, bottom 6 player. He's an NHL player when on the ice, and now getting a chance to see him healthy, you're seeing where he can play, which is pretty much anywhere, right? He can drive any line in the bottom 6, and he's doing a great job up in the top line. So he's pretty versatile right now, and whether he ends up at wing or center, I guess, ultimately down the line, that remains to be seen. But right now he's fitting in perfectly with Kopi and Kempe.
Woohoo are both tied for 41 points. Kempe's closed the gap and it has evened it up. Little side note here, is Adrian Kempe the Kings' overall best player at this point?
There's a pretty good case to be made for it. He's outstanding. I mean, what a season he's putting together. I mean, it's been great for him the last couple of seasons. And I tweeted this, I don't know how long ago, but I really hope like this 4 nations, he goes off in this 4 nations. So it starts to open some other people's eyes to just how good Adrian Kempe really is. He's really, really good. And I don't know, I get the sense that he's just not all that talked about. I mean, I'm on the East, and I don't know how many people know who Adrian Kempe is. So he is a stud, bona fide stud.
Yeah, it was that Speed and Chicklets segment, and I forget who they had on, and the guy was like,
Avery.
yeah, he was Avery, like, dude, Kempe's a dog, and everybody's like, Adrian Kempe, yeah, that guy's good. But
he called him the best player in the NHL.
They weren't expecting him to say Adrian Kempe when it came to that. So,
yeah, I mean, dude, like, I'm right with you, Joe. Like that 4 nations, like we can only talk about, and I mean, we've been standing on mountains trying to highlight all the good things that Anze Kopitar has been doing over the last 15 plus years as Kings fans. And now it feels like over these last couple of years, it's been Adrian Kempe who we're just trying to tell everybody like, hey, this guy is legitimately one of the best wingers in the NHL, the way he plays. And he's always been kind of like, I feel like he's been like hamstrung a little bit because of the style of play that the Kings play. Yeah. And I mean, you talk about the skill set that Adrian Kempe has with his skating ability, his shot. I mean, his defensive capability too. It's been all over the map, like how good he's been. And that's why it's like, I just hope, like, I'm right with you. Like, I hope, like, this Four Nations, like, everybody will be, and not that I hope, but I know that everybody will be able to see just how good Kempe is. And it's not to take away from the talent he's playing with, and Ajay Kopitar, obviously, and how good he's been, and Turcotte and all these other players that he's been playing with. But when you're playing on a skilled team like Team Sweden's going to have, and you're going to be playing with players like Eriksson Ek and Lucas Raymond and Elias Pettersson and like all these other good, like Victor Hedman now is going to be on your back end. You're going to be passing to back there. Like, we're going to see Adrian. I have full confidence in the world that Adrian Kempe is going to go up there and probably be one of the top scorers for Team Sweden. Because I remember watching those, I think it was the World Championships this past year when he was playing with Eriksson Ek and Raymond, and that line was just buzzing like every time they were on the ice. Easily the best line for Team Sweden. So it'll be fun to watch him kind of go off in that tournament and go up against play. I'm sure he'll be happy to go up against Connor McDavid. Now he's maybe got like a little bit of a better team, better chance. So that'll be fun to see.
I think that you're looking at, like you said, the system that they play in doesn't really allow him. And then we play on the West Coast, and you got to assume that the Four Nations tournament's going to be a little bit more run and gun because it's just going to be an all-star game type format. So like, I think that it's, you might see just, the full talent. And I fully believe that he could play. He could wing the Nathan McKinnons and the McDavids and the Sidney Crosbys any day of the week. I think he's that type of player. So seeing from the Kings dropped a couple games, couldn't find the scoring, and busted through last night. Was it just them beating down the door, or what did you kind of see from that lull with the Kings that maybe was kind of rectified in this game against the Canucks, or was it more the Canucks not being able to play hockey?
Well, the back-to-back with Edmonton, or the back-to-back that they started off with, Winnipeg and Calgary. Thank you. Those two games, I expected the Winnipeg game to be low scoring, and sure enough, it was. Winnipeg was just lucky to even get a power play there and to get the power play goal, and then Kempe was able to win in overtime. I like to throw out the frauds word, but I'm not that high in Winnipeg. I don't think they're as good as their record says they are.
I agree.
They're kind of getting carried by Hellebuyck a little bit, and their power play. So we'll see how long that goes on. The Calgary game, I kind of just write it off as a scheduled loss. As much as I don't like to use that excuse either, kind of felt that way, especially the way they played. That they started off really well. First period, I believe they outshot them like 16-4, something crazy like that. And then the third period, you can just tell they were just kind of running out of gas a little bit. The Edmonton game, I was kind of like, I don't want to say I was disappointed, but I was kind of hoping for a little bit more of a pushback, especially when they went down 1-0. It just like feels like Edmonton just gets up for that game against the Kings. And I watched this last game that Edmonton played against Colorado. It was the same thing. Like they went down quickly 3-0. You can kind of tell that they weren't really into the game, and then all of a sudden they're down 3-0. They're thinking like, "Oh, okay, let's turn things up. Let's have McDavid and McDrysdale play together." And sure enough, they come out and win the game, overcome that deficit 3-0. But when every time they play the Kings, it's like full 60. We're playing hard defensive hockey, locking down on our own end, and that's sure enough what happened. And then like when you play the Kings, I mean, the Kings are the same way, right? So you got this kind of slog of a game where it's just 0-0, and then sure enough, there's a 1-0 in the 4-on-4, and the Kings just couldn't stifle the Edmonton defense for whatever reason. And I was kind of hoping for a little bit more aggressive kind of forecheck, a little bit maybe more of like maybe more cheating to try to generate a little offense. Maybe you put Clark and Spence out there together at some times. Like I was hoping for a little bit more of that, but we didn't really get it. And so that's why I was kind of like disappointed and whatever, but it's still like a regular season game. And you don't want to put too much emphasis on that matchup, but then it just brings back and kind of highlights all the things that kind of gone wrong the last few years in the playoffs. And it's like the same kind of thing that we've been talking about. That's probably going to happen again in the playoffs if these two teams meet again, Edmonton and the Kings. It's just like the Kings are like, if they focus so much on defense, they're going to sacrifice the offense, and the Oilers will pick and choose their time to capitalize on their chances. And when you have players like McDavid and Draisaitl, that can easily be done. And sure enough, it was. And then when they got the goal, they knew that's all they needed, and they just kind of sat back and waited for the Kings to kind of try to focus and trying to generate a little bit of offense. And sure enough, they couldn't. And that's pretty much what was their downfall in the offensive game. But for the Vancouver game, it's just Vancouver's just awful right now. They can't figure it out. So I kind of just chalked that with an easy win, to be honest with you.
Yeah, my biggest takeaway from the Vancouver game was just that. Like, Vancouver needs a trade yesterday. That team is a mess right now. The Edmonton game, here's the thing that I think gets overlooked sometimes about Edmonton. I think people just too much say that they don't play defense, or they can't play defense, or they don't have good goaltending. None of that's true. They're one of the best expected goals against per 60 in the league. Again, by the way, this isn't new. They've been a pretty under the radar good defensive team in the league for a couple of years now. Skinner, the thing with Skinner is he's not really consistent, but when he can, he's a good goalie. And he did, I don't know how to, he was tested.
Well, that save on Kempe, right?
It was a great save.
Yeah,
he was
definitely
tested in the first period. The next two periods less so, but he was solid, and because he's a solid goalie that he has his moments where he isn't, but I think in general, over the grand scheme, I think he's a solid goaltender. So the thing is with Edmonton is they can beat you however you want to play. If you want to play that low scoring game, we saw that in the playoffs. We've seen them lock the Kings down in the playoffs. They won a 1-0 game, I think, in LA. I want to say was it last year?
I think it was 2-1 or 1-0. But yeah, I remember.
And it's like and they were like, we're good to do this. And because they know the Kings aren't going to push, there's no harm for them. Or if you want to play a 6-5 game, they're more than comfortable to do that too. I think that they can beat you in a couple of different ways, and they have a little bit of a cheat code with the star power and McDavid and Draisaitl, and I think that I think they're going to probably make some moves here to the deadline just to add some depth pieces. They'll probably look to upgrade the blue line.
They just did. They just signed Klingberg.
Well, that's right. I forgot about that.
I don't know if that's an upgrade, but it's a person.
I suspect that won't be the only one. But yeah, I that game, Russ, I listened to your Twitter Spaces afterwards, by the way. And I kind of agreed. Like, I don't know. I didn't get like that this was this crazy playoff intense game. It was, I guess, playoffs because it was tight. It was playoffs because there was some.
I felt like both teams were playing at like 80%, like the first.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, and again, I don't know. Maybe I wasn't. Obviously, if you're in the building and on the bench, it may have a different feel for it. I can appreciate that. So, I don't think though, Randon, like they had a stretch there before the Vancouver game where they weren't scoring goals. Again, I mean that is what is the more likely scenario is when they're going on a stretch where they're scoring 2 goals and less per game. That's the more likely scenario than when they're scoring 4 or 5 goals in some games because they don't generate a lot of chances statistically. So if that's more likely to happen when you're not, and when they go against a really good defensive team in playoffs, whether it's Edmonton or Vegas or whoever it is, it's hard pressed to see where the Kings are going to find goals. So I think that, against those teams, that just kind of reared its ugly head, I guess. And again, with Winnipeg, they got the Vezina Trophy winner. So that's just going to be tough in general. Calgary's been a really good story. So, but Vancouver's a mess.
If it wasn't for Hellebuck, though, we have probably the runner-up right now with Darcy Kemper playing a great stretch of hockey. I don't think he's allowed an even strength goal in like 197 minutes. Having a hell of a year so far. What are you guys seeing out of Darcy? Is that just him answering the call, or is it the defense itself? What are you kind of seeing from him between the pipes?
If I was a middling goaltender and looking to rejuvenate my NHL career, I would call the Kings and say, "Hey, can you give me a contract?" Like that's. I mean, seriously. Like as much as I want to like be like stoked for Kemper, and like I am. Like it's been great. Like excellent. Like not complaining at all. But like we saw this last year with Cam Talbot. Like this is a Kings team. And I remember Cam Talbot, when he did his introductory press conference last year, he even talked about it. Like the Kings make it easier for you as a goaltender. And it's very true. I mean, they're the best team in expected goals against per 60. And that's going to help when you're a goaltender. And that's going to help your stats when it comes to goals against average and saves percentage. It's not going to really help you in the goals saved above expected because there's not that many goals expected to be scored. So it's like, yeah, I mean, but like not, and this isn't to take away anything from what Kemper's been doing. Yeah, I mean, you've only given up 1 or less goal, even strength goal, or just 1 or less goal in the last 5 games. That's really good. So I mean, we've also seen there's been games too where Kemper's been kind of has stolen the game. I mean, look at the game against Buffalo at the beginning of the year. There was another game just a few games ago. I can't think off the top of my head, but I mean, there's been times where Kemper's really stood on his head and has really come to the forefront for this team. So, I mean, I'm sure there'll be times that'll be needed in the playoffs, and maybe we'll be, I guess, more excited when that comes. But for right now, Kemper's just kind of doing his job. He's making the saves that need to be made. And I mean, if you're a Kings fan, you have to be happy about it.
Yep, I totally agree. I don't know that I have him in the top 3 in a Vezina conversation. I think he's somebody that would get some votes if he continues on the way he's going. He's playing really, really well. He's rested. He's doing what he's doing his job. I think he's been a solid addition. I was skeptical coming in because he was coming off a bad year. He's a guy that's battled injuries, and he has battled injuries this year. And that's the only kind of potential, hold your breath if you're the Kings. Like, can he last the next 3 months? Hopefully he can. So, but he's been good, no question.
What do we think about the split that they're kind of going at right now with him in the backup going on? Is it something that can be maintained with how old both of them are? Do they need to kind of go a more 50-50? So I think they're like 60-40 right now. If I were to guess, I have to look that up, but they seem to be riding Kemper quite a bit.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to see them hopefully back off it a little bit. Again, I want them as healthy as possible, right, as they head into playoffs. At the same time, they're trying to win games. They're trying to catch Edmonton and Vegas, so he clearly gives you the best chance to win. They're in a really comfortable spot, though. Like, it's not safe per se, but they're 6 points up on Calgary, so they should feel pretty good about where they sit, at least to finish in the top 3 in the division. So if there's opportunity to give him some breaks, I think that would be good. Because I would ride Kemper come playoff time. But until then, I'm fine making sure he's getting some time off as needed.
Yeah, it's pretty much been a 50-50 split. I'm looking at the games played. Kemper at 22, Rittich at 21. And
what about since Kemper's been back, though?
Since Kemper's been back,
because he's been hurt. So I wonder, since he's been back, I think it's been a heavier dose of Kemper.
Yeah, it definitely feels like it, huh?
I'm just saying you're looking at it both an injury prone goaltender, yep. And then, but we also talked about how well the Kings are playing at home. Like, they're not out of the race for the first overall seed. I mean, they're only 6 points back with 3 games in hand, and having to not play Edmonton or Vegas would be a benefit. And then you're playing at home. Kings have one of the best home records. Jim Hiller's been a wizard with calling these matchups all year long. Like, is that more important for the Kings to get the Pacific Trophy, have home field advantage because of how well they played at home, and maybe with stylistically they need that advantage more than other teams?
Yeah, I mean, if they can get first, it'd be excellent. At this point, I just don't see them passing Edmonton. Edmonton's on a roll. Draisaitl's probably going to win the Hart the way he's been playing. McDavid doing McDavid things. Like Joe said, they'll probably even get better at the trade deadline because it seems like they're looking for another defenseman on top of Klingberg that they got today. Because John Klingberg is John Klingberg, so it is what it is. I brought the stat since December 1st. Kemper's played 12 games. Rittich has played 5. So yeah, not much of a split since then. But yeah, just to go back to the standings. I mean, at this point, as Kings fans, or like myself, as I'm thinking, like, I would just hope that Edmonton passes Vegas and just takes the Pacific, and the Kings can get the 2nd seed and maybe face off against Vegas and get that home ice advantage. Because Joe or Randon, like you mentioned, the home ice, like the record, they have the best home ice record in the NHL, and I believe it's like 19 of their last 29 games after the 4 nations are all at home. So they have a legitimate chance to make up some ground maybe, or even pass Vegas, or even maybe, who knows, maybe take Edmonton's spot as a top seed. Because I would expect Edmonton, I mean, they're just going to keep rolling at this point. So don't expect them to pass them. But I mean, the way that Vegas was playing, I don't want to say that they've been like faltering of late, because they still have one of the better records, I believe, since December 1st. So they're still playing well, but they've kind of been losing, kind of going back and forth with games. So hopefully that continues and the Kings can make some ground and maybe pass them by the time season ends.
Home ice would be important. I mean, if anything, it's just because, it means they moved up at least one. I'd be hard pressed to think that they can pass them both. Maybe one of Vegas or Edmonton slips a bit, but I just don't know that both of them do. Like Matt P puts in the chat, Vegas has lost 4 or 5. Yeah, and they're still 6 points up on LA. So, like, are they losing 4 of their next 5? I guess maybe, but I just don't know that I see LA getting to the number 1 in the Pacific, although as big as that would be.
I just the point of, do you ride Kemper to get that, to secure that, because I think more than any other team that matters for the Kings. I mean, with the style that we play, the how much matchups are important for us to take on, and the fact that they've just been really good. I think the number 1 team since Hiller has become coach at home. So is it worth riding Darcy that much at his age in order to secure that?
It would be LA's luck that the year they win the Pacific is the year that Colorado or Dallas is that wild card team that they would play. Because I don't like either of those matchups. I don't care where they're played. So whatever. I mean, you can't do anything about that. But Brandon, I'll be honest. Like, I think it's great that the Kings are as good as they are at home. And I think that gives them obviously if they can start at home, that's a better chance, right? Then I'd give them a better chance than if they're starting on the road. But I'm not just the Kings are so good at home. Those if they start the series in LA, those are 3 locked in wins at home. Like I'm not, I don't know how much that carries over into playoffs. I don't know. I'm not. Maybe it will, but I'm not convinced that it will. But that said, rather start at home than on the road.
I think at least the one positive, if they do start at home, is it seems like the matchups with the bottom 6, or at least the third line with Byfield and whoever he's playing with, seem a little bit better or improved since the last few years. But I mean, when you play the Oilers and Knobloch is trotting out McDavid and Draisaitl every other shift, you're losing the matchup, so it doesn't matter. So it is what it is. And I mean, that's what's kind of happened the last few years. The Kings they didn't win a game at home last year. They went 0-2. They've won the first game on the road each 3 years. They've ended up losing. So, I mean,
that's I think it's a little fluky sometimes too.
Yeah, maybe that works better against another team in the playoffs. Who knows? Maybe that's not as deep or doesn't have the elite star power that maybe Edmonton does. I mean, I know Colorado obviously does with McKinnon and McCarr. They're going to go out there, and although they're seems like their depth, and they're kind of upset with the way Middlestate's been playing lately.
Yeah,
Vegas, they're pretty deep too. So who knows? But I do obviously home ice advantage would be a premium that I'm sure Hiller would love to have with the way he kind of runs out the 11-7 every game.
I think it's a bigger advantage against Vegas. I don't think their center. I don't think they're that strong down the middle outside of Eichel. They have a lot of good wingers, and they have an incredible blue line, probably the best blue line in hockey.
Yeah,
but their center depth isn't that great. So, like, if you can get some matchups there, I mean, I would think that's an advantage for.
Yeah,
yeah. Go ahead, Joe.
I agree. I agree with that. I think that like, I don't know. I know, and Russ, I think you had said this at some point, and I think I'm like getting there. Like having QB against the other teams, maybe like top center to maybe try to shut them down. I don't know. Like, I still don't know if he'll be able to, if that's a legit thing that they can like bank on. Because at the end of the day, Kopitar is still their best, defense. You want, as much as you want him to just lock down Jack Eichel, for example, in that, if they play Vegas, it also, takes away their best offensive line, really, because with Kempe and Turcotte. So how does that play into it? So it'd be nice if they could trust a Deneau line to shut down. But again, it's just kind of awkward because Kevin Fiala ain't shutting anybody down. So you can't use Deneau in a shutdown role. So if you could with Byfield, the way he skates, and him and Fogle have been excellent defensively this year, like I think there's something there. Whether or not that's the answer and that's the key, I don't know, but I think that's something that you could see.
So get another guy's been wearing a non-contact jersey. Drew Doughty is back skating by himself. He said that everything's feeling great, and he said the team's probably going to have to save him from himself because he already wants to be back out on the ice. But he's obviously going to be an addition. What does that decor look like? Do you guys still think they'll go 11-7 with the way that Mavrar has been playing? Kind of how you feel about the whole situation now that it's coming to a close with him returning to the lineup?
I mean, I think it'll be no surprise if they just go back to what they had last year with Anderson, Doughty. Well, it wasn't last year, but I mean, you have Anderson, Doughty, Gavrikov, Spence, and then Edmondson and Clark. I think that's probably most likely what's going to happen. We all love Jacob Moverara. We want him to play. I would honestly be surprised if they continue to play him because it seems like they just kind of like to have a player like Kyle Burrows out there on the ice for whatever reason each game. So it is what it is. I'm not sold on them, but I do. I'm not going to sit here and say I don't want Moverara out there because I love the way he's been playing. I think he's been one of the more consistent defensemen every time he's out there on the ice every game. So hopefully that continues. But I mean, I've been kind of like tinkering around, like thinking in my head, like the way that Gavrikov and Anderson, they've been playing so well. So it would be tough to kind of separate them. So maybe, I mean, if you don't, who knows? Maybe you do go like a Edmondson Doughty or with a Clark Spence kind of pairing. The thing is though, is like if you, as well as the Anderson Gavrikov pair has been playing, you don't really have any offense from that pair. It's kind of just like we're just going to shut people down and close the door and let the forwards kind of do the work, which has been great. And they've been doing a real good job at it. But you certainly you add Doughty to the fold with pairing with Mikey Anderson and the way he's been playing this year. I think that just definitely improves. So, yeah, as much as people probably don't want to separate 44 and 84, I think that's just the easy fix.
I think that I don't know. I've gone back and forth on this, although I do think they should. I think Hillard should stay 11-7. I kind of think he will stay 11-7 because if anything, to ease Doughty back in a little bit and keep an eye on his minutes, at least in the short term. But, I think Moverari, I think he stays. Like, I think that Burrows, you look at he's played like 7 minutes combined the last 2 games or something like that. So I don't think that Burrows is necessarily going to beat out Moverari. I wouldn't think. Yes, I did, Matt P. But I actually think, and I'm coming around to the idea to keeping Anderson and Gavrikov together. Like, again, especially if you're going against Edmonton, there's your just put them out against McDavid and hold your breath and hope for the best. And this maybe that frees up Doughty a little bit to play with again, you could go more. And by having 11-7, it gives you some flexibility to kind of mix and match a little bit. You can go back to Anderson Doughty depending on scenario. You can go Moverari Doughty. You can. I think that gives them some more options, but it could give them a legit shutdown, truly the definition of a shutdown pair in Anderson and Gavrikov. And I don't hate it I don't know if it matters. Like, they're going to lose, I think, any like possession and expected goals against a McDavid matchup, if that's what they decided to do. It's just, will they lose less than what they would have normally? You know what I mean? And like, you looked at the last game, it's a 1-game thing, but I think they performed pretty well, if I recall, against McDavid when they played him the other day. So, I think there's something there, yeah, I mean, McDavid had he had a 55% expected goal percentage against Anderson and Gavrikov, but against 1 game. So, but I can see them keeping it together just because they've been so good as a shutdown pair, and then roll the other 5 as they see fit. Obviously Doughty's going to play his minutes once he gets ramped up. He's going to play. It's just you figure out what works best there, whether it's Moverari. So I don't know. I kind of think he stays 11-7 and keeps Moverari in the fold somewhere.
So if you go Gavrikov, if you keep Gavrikov Anderson, where do you put Doughty?
So
right there.
Yeah,
I saw that. I saw our boy Carter here.
That's why I
like
to see how things kind of play out. Like I wouldn't be surprised. Like I don't like a Moverari Doughty. Like the guys that are going to lose the time here are going to be Spence, Moverari, and Clark. Like Edmondson's not losing time. Doughty's once Doughty's ramped up, he's going to get his. So I think Moverari Doughty could be an interesting pair. I think that could do just fine. And then again, you're kind of mixing it. It's going to be Edmondson with Clark and Spence. Obviously, do I like that? Not necessarily. I think, Hiller could be playing a little chess, not checkers here. If all of a sudden we see number 6's minutes really start to slide down that, once Doughty's back and he starts to slide Moverari in a little bit more. Obviously, it's not going to happen, but I think by having the 7D, it gives him some flexibility to play with.
Clark
it also allows
screams a lot of fun.
It also allows their horses in the forward group to play more. They've been cycling Fiala, and Byfield, and all that kind of stuff like that.
Yep. Yeah,
I don't hate come around on it. I like it.
I didn't love it at first, but I've come around to it. I didn't love it because I'm like, I don't think they got 7 defensemen they could even roster, let alone play regularly. But with the way, they've trusted Moverari to play, with the way Clark and Spence have played, and Gavrikov's having a huge year and a contract year. Like, there's one weak link on that back end, which is better than I thought it would have been coming into the season, because you started the season potentially having, there was games, I think, where you had Edmondson, Englund, and Burrows all in the same lineup. Caleb Jones, who I think did a fine job in the time he did, and he saw a lot of times. So for a while there, it was a little dicey. But as Doughty comes back here, I think you're looking at, you got 6 solid defensemen.
6?
6, and then plus number 6.
Okay.
6 plus 6.
Yeah.
Well, remember that one game, Jordan Spence was benched in Toronto at the beginning of the year.
Yep.
Crazy. And he
had a rough start. If we're being fair, he had a rough start. Him and Anderson it didn't work. You look at Spence's numbers away from Anderson, he's been really good. Really good.
Matt P mentioned in the chat that Spence has been so much better with Mo, and I'm glad that Hiller was just truthful about the whole situation with Jordan Spence, because he said what you said. Like he started off really poorly. He was just playing so bad. But since Moverari has come in, I don't know if it's the familiarity with them playing together in the Ontario or just the way that Jacob's been playing. But it's been like a different player for Jordan, so it's been good to see he's playing a lot more confidence.
You know what you can be confident about is when you bet with our first sponsor here at DraftKings. So have you played Pick 6 from DraftKings yet? What are you waiting for? You better get on it. The playoffs are here and time is running out. As an official daily fantasy sports partner of the NFL, DraftKings does fantasy sports like no one else. Play for better payouts on Pick 6. It's super easy to get started. Select 2 or more players. Choose whether they'll have more or less of a certain stat, like touchdown, yardage, sacks, and more. Pick 6 is available in most states, including Missouri, California, Texas, Georgia. And DraftKings is making it even sweeter for first times. New Pick 6 customers can play $5 and get $50 in Pick 6 credits. Win more cash on Pick 6. Download DraftKings Pick 6 app. Use code THPN. That's code THPN for new customers to play $5 and get $50 in Pick 6 credits only on DraftKings Pick 6. The ground is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. In Connecticut, must be 18 plus age and eligibility restrictions by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. 1 per new customer. Bonus is non-withdrawable. Pick 6 credits expire within 30 days. Limited time offer. See terms at picksix.draftkings.com/promos.
Talking about the decor there, Randon, looking at some all three zones tracking. Moverari doesn't have enough track to have it listed, but he's got what he has is zone exits by type. So whether it's a passed exit or a carried exit, only Brant Clark is above league average in passed exits, and only Jordan Spence is above league average in carried exits. Everybody else is in that dreadful bottom left corner, so nothing has really the reason I bring this up, Drew Doughty, who obviously hasn't played this year, but looking at his last year's statistics, the only LA Kings defenseman to be in that upper right quadrant, meaning he does both passing and skating the puck out of the zone with possession. So again, just another really good reason to look forward to as he gets back into the lineup, is another defenseman that can get them out of the zone a little bit quicker. And it's something that I've always preached about is, like the Kings could need a forward. And the more I think about it, the more you think, do the Kings need a top six forward? Yeah, sure. But does it really matter? It may not matter at 5-on-5. I think it could matter on the power play. But if Doughty can add that, if Doughty can add getting out of the zone clean, guess what they're probably going to do more? Create more scoring chances, maybe even off the rush, because they're going to spend less time in their zone. So that's why I'm a believer of why I want defensemen that can get the Kings out of their zone. It's not because I love, offense, quote unquote, yes, I do, but I don't want to spend time in the defensive zone. Get me out of it so I can go spend time playing the other zone. And if Drew Doughty can help that, he may not directly be somebody that leads to offense. He may not score the goal. He may not get the assist, but if he gets the puck out of the zone that leads to that, well, guess what? That's offense from your defenseman.
And we haven't even seen him play in the 1-2-2 yet. And he was one of the guys that kind of sounded like he was against the 1-3-1 when it was first implemented. So yeah, that'll be an interesting aspect. It hasn't really changed much in terms of their focus on defense, but who knows? Maybe it helps them out with the breakouts and stuff like that. Different formation.
What's a little different right now is we're getting to our next segment, Coast to Coast, with Hockey Royalty, where we're talking about news all around the NHL. And we got a good one. Somebody guessed it right off the bat. We're going to be talking about our boys in Columbus. So Columbus right now is having a good season. They're in the wild card spot. Who would have thought? Haven't made the playoffs since 19 and 20. But some of their young guns are playing some good hockey, as well as some cohesion with the team. What are you guys seeing from Columbus? What is the difference this year? Are they just getting progression out of the young stars? Did they make some key acquisitions? Are they just finally playing better? What are you guys seeing out of Columbus?
I think it's a little bit of everything. I mean, it's been such a good story with everything they went through in the offseason. I've always been kind of had a soft spot for Columbus. They always seem like the team that
punching bag.
What was that?
The punching bag of the league, like the jokes.
Exactly. The team that everybody kind of beats up on. But they've always, and I feel like they've drafted so well lately. They have so many players that I thought I was always high on. Ken Johnson was one of my favorites out of the 2019 draft, I believe, or 21, 20, I can't remember, 21, I believe. But so yeah, he's been playing well. But yeah, you mentioned all the young players, Johnson, Fantilli, Sillinger,
Marchenko,
or Marchenko, man, that guy is just so entertaining. He's a highlight reel every time he's on the ice. So he's been fun. He's electric out there. But I mean, Zach Rowinski, I watched I've been watching the last couple Columbus Blue Jackets games. This guy deserves the Norris Trophy. If he doesn't win a Norris Trophy this year, he's pretty much it. I don't know, but every time he steps on the ice, he's got just kind of takes over the game. The way he skates, the way he reads the ice. So yeah, with him, the level that he's been playing, and all the young guys that have been kind of elevated their game too. They're probably one of the better stories in the Eastern Conference, and at least one of the better teams to kind of come out of this pool of sadness that is the wild card in the East right now.
Yeah, I think Dean Evison deserves a lot of credit here in Columbus. I mean, I think he's easily, especially if they make playoffs, easily. And I mean, I don't know how Spencer Carberry isn't going to win the Jack Adams Award. He's running away with it right now. But if Columbus makes the playoffs, he's an easy number 2 for me. Is Dean Evison, what he's done with Columbus, and he's really putting his trust in a lot of these young players. I think that's a big difference. That you're seeing the growth from a Voronkov and a Marchenko and these guys. That's one of the better lines in the league. Monahan, I think, is hurt right now, I want to say, but he's been an important part of that play.
Over a point per game player for them this year.
Yeah, he's been a really important part of that team. It's great. Like I'm really happy to see that they've been able to put this type of season together. And I'll be honest with you, like I remember saying it after the Kings played. I'm like, the Kings won that game against Columbus, but Columbus did not make that easy for the Kings. That I think it might have been like a 5-2 win, but it was not as easy as that. I was impressed with how Columbus played LA, to be honest with you, back early in the season. And hey, they're making a little run here. I hope they get in. You know, it's good for them. Nobody else in the East apparently wants it, so hopefully they can find their way in.
It's good for hockey too, because when fan bases go so long without getting the playoffs, like it's debilitating. And I mean, Joe knows a little bit about that with Buffalo up there. I mean, like just fans that just get sick of the team.
Yeah.
And I think Buffalo's a little bit of a hockey town because you're right next to Canada. You got a lot of hockey background there, but Columbus is not necessarily a hockey town. And so like having playoff games and playoff stuff like that, where you're on television, young kids are watching the sport. I think it's huge for developing fan bases in the youth and like getting people to go to games when you're relevant by being in a playoff hunt, and then seeing playoff games. I think it's huge to build fan bases and then momentum as a franchise.
Yeah, with how much of a miss the Winter Classic was this past last month or whatever, with Blackhawks playing the Blues, just no contest. I'm actually very excited for this upcoming game, outdoor game in Columbus between the Blue Jackets and the Red Wings. Like that game, you're talking about two teams that are kind of like surging now, especially with Detroit now that they've got our boy Todd McClellan over there, who's turned things around. They're 8-2 in their last 10, only 3 points out of a wild card spot. So now he's got like a little bit more of an emphasis on trying to actually win the game, as opposed to the Blackhawks when it was just like, hey, here's Connor Bedard, let's throw him out the ice. Hopefully he does something cool. And Blackhawks fans are going to always show up. So yeah, this will be a fun game, especially when you're there at the Horseshoe. So I'm looking forward to that one. But what's our thought on this wild card race right now? Like Joe, you mentioned it. Like it seems like, or maybe it was Brandon, but like it seems like nobody really wants to take the bull by the horns here and really take that spot.
I mean, so Columbus is in the first wild card with 50 points. Boston has 49. Boston's only 2 points behind Tampa in the division. It was 51. Then you've got Ottawa, Montreal just outside at 48 points. Detroit, Philly, Pittsburgh with 46 points, and the Rangers at 45 points. So you got two teams.
The Rangers are 4 points out of a playoff spot with everything that's been going on there.
So I don't know. And I couldn't even tell you who I like as favorites coming out of that group. I mean,
Boston's in that second wild card spot. They have a negative 22 goal differential.
Yeah. I don't know.
I like it because there's a lot of teams that Ottawa hasn't been in the playoffs, in 6 years. There's a lot of teams, Detroit,
Montreal.
It's been a while.
Montreal's
been a while. Like, I think there's a lot of teams that for their fan bases, it could be cool and intrigue, like coming down to the last one, the trade deadline, like, are they going to be there? All of those teams could add one piece and like nudge away from the rest of the teams there. I think it'll be interesting because going down the stretch, what moves are being made and then kind of who pulls away, I think is going to be huge. And like normally a lot of those teams would be sellers or like trade away veterans. Now, do you hold pat? Do you try to make a third line center or winger move at cheap, throw away a third round pick or a fourth round pick to go get somebody that could help your team? And I think now that there's not a lot of sellers or, pre-diagnosed sellers as there used to be, like, are the pickings at the deadline going to be a little bit thinner? Like our Marchenko would be a perfect ad for any team. But is Columbus going to trade Marchenko knowing that they're in the wild card? They're probably not
No.
going to.
I'm going to interrupt you. I've seen way too much talk about Marchenko. Why? Somebody tell me why Columbus trades him. And I'm not saying you were suggesting this, Brandon, but they have, how old is he, Russ? Is he 23?
23, 24. Yeah, he's still young. 2
I-
years left at like 3.5, I think.
I mean, are we just picking names because we like players? He's not going anywhere.
I think a lot of people
Brandon.
assume Columbus is in last place because they usually are, but they're
Even
not.
if they're in last place, why are they selling Marchenko?
Because he's their best asset to get rid of. I guess Monahan would be their best asset to get rid of. He's
right. Like that,
there you go.
There's something that makes a little bit more sense, but like Marchenko never made any sense because why would they trade him? Like, well, duh. All 31 teams, other teams would want Marchenko, but why is Columbus trading their best player? Their best young player? It doesn't make any sense.
Well, I don't have any more opinions on this because I don't have my tinfoil hat on. So
yet.
But no, this deadline, it's going to be. I'm looking at the standings right now and like just trying to find teams that will, like, who's going to feel like they need to go for it, or who feels like they're just going to like, hey, we're just going to run with what we got, or even become so. Like you said, Brandon, like what was it last year with the Flyers, who were like right there, I believe, with the Capitals in terms of that wild card spot, and they came out and said like, no, we're not buying. We're probably going to be sellers, and I think they traded some players and they even still kind of made some noise toward the end. So I don't know. I still feel like there's teams that kind of realize like where they're at. Like you're not going to see the Penguins be sellers. They're, especially with Crosby, probably not going to see the Bruins be sellers, although Trent Frederick's name's kind of floated out there. I think you'll probably see like teams like maybe Philly still be sellers. New York, although they're more out of it. Maybe even Detroit. But some of these younger teams like Columbus, Montreal, I would say even maybe Ottawa, they're probably going to just kind of ride the wave and just kind of go with what they got and see what they get out of it.
I think Ottawa's going to be as aggressive as they can be. This is a team that's been kind of like them. Buffalo, Detroit have been like the last 2 years saying who's taking the next step. They all refuse to take the next step. Ottawa has taken the closest to taking the next step this year. Obviously under McClellan, Detroit's starting to turn it around. So we'll see if that holds. I think this is a big year coming into the season for Ottawa. I think they are aggressive. I think they really push some chips in to try to make playoffs. Philly, I think, sells like the other thing to look at when you look at how close these standings are, some of these tiebreakers are going to come into play, and Philly's only got 12 regulation wins. So, and you look at by comparison, Columbus got 17 and they're only 4 points up. So I don't know. I do wonder. I think Philly probably should be a team that sells. Pittsburgh, I agree. They should probably sell or at least do what they've been doing, like trade for these post-hype young players, but they're still young, like 24, 25 years old, to try to keep them relevant for a little bit here. But yeah, I mean, to Randon's point, the only, I would say, definitive sellers in the East right now are the Islanders and the Sabres. I maybe the Rangers, but again, Russ, like you said, how many? They're 4 points out. There's 900 teams to leapfrog, so you got to factor.
What are they going to sell too? Like that.
Jonathan Quick to the Kings. It earns us our third Stanley Cup.
Conversely though, guys, like you look at the West, you've got 3 teams for one spot. It's Calgary, Vancouver, St. Louis for the second wild card.
Yeah, Utah was kind of making a little bit of noise, but they've 3 in a row.
They're not out of it. 6 points, they're not out of it. But I think next year, I think we should start to really factor Utah in as being. I picked them to make the playoffs this year. I think I'm a year early. I think next year they
injuries definitely hurt.
Yeah, but Calgary right now, second wild card, 49 points. Vancouver 48 points. St. Louis 48 points. That's become a 3-team race. I think Vancouver. Listen. They won the division right last year. I don't think they're just going to be selling anything. I know there's a lot of talk about JT Miller, what I will talk about later, but that team's going to want to make playoffs. St. Louis with Montgomery, I can see St. Louis not being too aggressive because Montgomery's in, and maybe they'll just try to see what happens here, and then they really ramp up next year with a full season of Montgomery. Calgary, again, I don't think Calgary goes too heavy either as terms of buying. I think you could see them stand pat. So Vancouver, like, they're going to be aggressive in some fashion, I would guess.
Yeah, I think Conroy actually said for Calgary that they're not going to be buyers. I could be wrong there, but
Yep, that would make sense.
Yeah, the West is much more definitive than the East.
Speaking of what I'm buying though, turn it back to the East. Father Time is not undefeated when it comes to Ovechkin.
Holy cow!
Guy comes back from a broken leg and he's just like, yeah, like hold my beer. Let me just keep putting these goals in. It's not about a matter of if this season. It seems like a matter of when this season is he going to break that. Is there still kind of based on his pace that it's going to be in LA when he plays in LA? I've heard that multiple times when Washington comes to town.
They come in March something? It's like mid-March, I believe.
I think that injury kind of halted that. I don't know that he can do it in mid-March. Maybe he can, the way he's going. But
dude, that overtime goal that he scored was just like easy wrister, just streaming down the wing. It was like, man, like that guy still has it. It's incredible. Trying to find see if I can see their schedule, how many games they have till then. But I don't think it's that many. So yeah, he's 21 games out, and there's like, I don't know, he'd probably have to get like a goal per game, maybe. I think he's like 20 games until then. So until he plays the Kings, it's not out of the realm of possibility, but who knows?
More towards the end of March. What is your opinion on it? Do you care that if he beats Gretzky because he's the great one? Do we want more people at the top of the record books? Is it nice to have a person maybe outside of the Canadian, juggernauts get some recognition among the all-time greats? Like, how do you guys feel about it?
I mean, I'm a Gretzky guy. Like, he was my, I was too young to see his prime, but thanks to my dad, really understood quickly. Like, he was the first player I knew about. He was the first player that I watched. He was the first player he's the reason I'm a Kings fan. So I'm a Gretzky guy, but that said, so I want Gretzky just because he's, he's my favorite player. So like, I want Gretzky to have the record, but at the end of the day, like, it's pretty cool to see this happen. We watched Ovechkin at this point from start to finish, and I didn't get a chance to see Gretzky from start to finish. I saw, kind of mid to finish, and to see history being made during, my lifetime is really, really cool. So I have no issues whatsoever. I'm a Gretzky fan, but I have no issues whatsoever if Ovechkin breaks it.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I've kind of always
when he breaks it, because it's obviously going to happen now.
Yeah, I've always been a fan of Ovi. Like, he's electrifying. He's it was like, I mean, when he was in his prime, it was just like, oh man, like, it's so fun to watch him just like, not even just score goals, but the way he threw his body around and just like, it was that Stanley Cup win that he had. I mean, that whole series, and to see him finally lift the cup, like, I felt like I was like happy for him, like happy to see Ovi do it. And now that, like, I mean, nobody expected even any of Gretzky's records to be broken, and now it seems like it's inevitable at this point. So, yeah, I'm cool with it. Like I said, like, I've always been an Ovi fan. I'm not necessarily like rooting for it, but like, yeah, go do your thing, Ovi.
I mean, and man, those Ovechkin Crosby matchups back in the day were freaking awesome.
Mm-hmm.
They always lived up to the hype.
Watching him on versus.
Yeah. OLN.
Carter Scores coming in here. He said, just to think, OV's seen lockouts and shortened seasons. He could be chasing 1,000 already.
Yeah,
dude,
crazy.
It's automatic, man. Like that. I don't know. Like, put a special dot on the ice where he's usually standing on the power play to like commemorate him, because it's like everybody knew it was coming and nobody could stop it.
Russ, when they do his final game of his career or whatever, they have the number on the ice. Sometimes 99 was behind the net. They should put 8 right in that left circle.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's
because you would just see him sometimes. He'd just be this, like, he'd just be sitting there like that.
I remember, what was it? There's a Kings game like 2 years ago in LA. I think it was 2 years ago. And it was like a power play they had. or is a 5-on-3, and he just did it 3 times in a row. Just 94. I think I clocked it. It was like 94. Well, I mean, they clocked it, but like I think I looked back and it was like 94-mile-an-hour clappers, just one after another, 3 times in a row. And it was like, man, like there's nothing you could do. It's like 5-on-3 or whatever. Like, what are you gonna do? Nobody's gonna get in front of those. That's how he gets all of them. I was gonna ask you guys before we end the coast to coast, because I heard Friedman talk about it on one of his 32 Thoughts pods the other day. What would be your guys' thoughts on expanded playoffs?
My knee jerk is always I'm against it, because I just how do they where do they find the room to fit it in? I just
think they'd mentioned like a play-in or something similar to the NBA, what they're doing.
I don't know. I mean, the play-in thing is, because baseball did that for a bit. Now they got a full-on like first round for a wild card now.
Right, yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know. It doesn't bother me. I was like, I probably said the same thing with baseball. Like, what do they really need it? But then again, with baseball, there were so few teams that made playoffs that it made a little bit more sense. Like half the freaking league makes the playoffs in hockey. Do you even need a regular season at that point if you're adding more playoffs? So I don't know. I mean, my knee jerk is to say I'm against it, but if somebody makes a compelling case, I'll listen. Maybe I'll be wrong, or I'd be willing to be more open to it.
I mean, I'm looking at it right now, and like there's some teams that are in playoff contention that have less than a 50, like they're
under 500. Like, why do you want that? Why? That's what I don't understand. Is you're like, why would you want mediocre teams getting in? Like, who wants that?
Like the first year in baseball, they had the expanded playoffs. Like the number 7 seed was below 500, and I'm like, that's like they don't deserve to be there.
Yeah, that was my same thought process when I was listening to it. I was like these teams are on they're like an 85 point pace. Like, do we really need them in the playoffs? Like you said, Joe, like there's already 16 out of the 32 teams that make it.
Half the league makes it.
What's the point?
What are we doing here?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I just thought, I get the money side of it because
the
NHL is a gate driven league. So you get some a little bit extra revenue. But at this point, it's like, why? Like, what would be the point? So, especially if you're probably having two other franchises come into the league too, and then you're going to have additional playoff spots. So it's just like, and I feel like that's kind of what's been kind of a bad thing for the NBA. I don't want to say it's killed it, but certainly hurt their ratings a little bit. Is this playing now? It's like I could care less about the regular season.
Just wait for playoffs.
Like, yeah, exactly. Like the Lakers will probably make a play-in at least, and maybe they'll probably turn up at that point. But so like as an NHL fan, like you're just kind of like it's reducing the emphasis of having a good regular season. Like, what's the point if I have a chance to make a play-in, I'll get healthy then, and hopefully try my luck then go for it. Like at this point, I think the regular season is fine as it is.
If it's a matter of like having something interesting to watch, I think they're onto something with the Four Nations tournament. Like, what if they incorporated a little bit of like soccer, where they have some regulation or whatever, or relegation? I mean,
relegation.
Yeah. So they get Team Russia, then they get team, because I don't know, is it only NHL players? Yeah, it's only NHL players for this one. But like if they added some of the smaller countries, you'd have to get permission for them to come and play. So if they need permission and they don't want to do that, maybe you have Team Russia and then you have Team Europe, like all the other countries that aren't involved with Sweden, Finland, or whatever. And then you have like the top 4 nations, and then you have the 2 nations that aren't in the top 4. They play each other in a 3-series playoff or whatever. The winner goes up, and the team with the worst record in the top 4 goes down. Like, and then you do like a 4 nations like style tournament every year. Like, I think then you get different cities wanting to host that. Maybe a city in, like if it's the relegation is German or like the European in Russia, maybe it's in Moscow and you have NHL in Moscow to where you're broadening the fans. I think there's a lot of, or like Jacob says, call it the Hockey World Cup, or whatever, they do it. Something like that. Like, I think they could do more with that because to be honest, the All-Star game, I could care less. I think the players could care less either. Like, unless it's your first one and you really want to be acknowledged for that and it's kind of cool. But most of them don't care. Like, if you put money, like actual money from the TV revenue that you're going to make and like make something out of this Four Nations tournament, I think it'd be really cool. And I think a lot of fans would do it. The NBA is onto something with this mid-season tournament. Like, I think it's kind of cool and like other teams win it, but there's money involved and the players are going to play in it because there's money involved. I think if they did that, it'd be a lot cooler than having one more team make the playoffs.
I absolutely hate that the NBA feels compelled to throw money at multimillionaires to get them to play harder for a sport that they're already paid more than well enough as it is already. So it's like that whole conversation about, hey, these players can win money. Like, they don't give a like, to excuse me, they don't give a fuck about any of that. Like, why does LeBron care if he wins an in-season tournament for $1 million? Like, he could care less. Like, I'm sure the bench players probably care. They're making league minimum. That would be cool. Like, the Four Nations thing, like, I'm trying to like pump myself up for it. Like, yeah, and I am excited because like we talked about earlier, like players like Kempe is going to have this like stage to kind of showcase his skills. But if the Olympics were going on like at their continuous basis, like in the NHL had still been participating, we would care less about the Four Nations because it'd be like the Olympics were just 3 years ago. Like, why do we care about another mid-season tournament? Like, the Olympics are going to happen in 2 years as it is, next year as it is. So what does it matter? Like, I think this is more just like kind of an appetizer. But you talked about like the relegation aspect of it. Like, I was talking about this with somebody else. I would absolutely love if they found out a way to bring relegation to every pro sports league, because I feel like that's what's so big in Europe and all this soccer, that like you get these little cities that maybe don't have like the big market and that huge fan base, and all of a sudden like, hey, we have something to cheer about, like, and something to kind of root for. Maybe we're in a secondary league and now we have a chance to get in this big league and be with these big like teams and whatnot. Like, I would love that aspect of it. But as far as like the in-season tournament and stuff like that, like, I think it would just be hard to kind of get these players, these pro players that are really kind of looking to. I mean, the thing about the NHL, like, everybody's trying to get their name on the Stanley Cup, and that's kind of like the premier like trophy in all of sports, and that's what's, I feel like, what separates the NHL from the other sports leagues. But then when you add these other in-season tournaments, I feel like it kind of loses its importance a little bit.
Yeah, I think it'd be pretty tough to see. And I think, I don't know about the NBA, but I'm sure hockey owners are going to be not all excited unless the money's that good to see their guys play in these mid-season tournaments. I don't know. It's got to be tough. Like, you think the Edmonton owners really excited about seeing McDavid play?
For the Four Nations, yeah.
The Four Nations.
Well, who cares about what the owners think? I don't care. They're multi-billionaires.
But
they make their money on the backs of us, and the fans want to see it. So screw them. Like, they've hid their players, their best players, away for decades from playing all these tournaments because it betters the NHL. Well, then now the NHL is getting ESPN style money. So what comes more money comes more opportunities for fans to see games, and like, this is a huge for fans to see games. And like, there's Dave O here. I don't want any Kings players to risk for injuries. It's part of playing hockey. Like, it could happen just in a normal regular season game, just as it can happen in this Four Nations game or at practice or whatever. So like, I want to see some fun stuff. Like, the Four Nation tournaments are going to be what's going to get people into hockey. Like, we're not football where it's built into the culture of states. Like, it's built into the culture of Canada, but it's not built into the culture of a lot of the United States. And so like, this kind of stuff where it's broadcast on ESPN, you're going to have the best of the best. So like, this hockey should be better. Like, I started watching hockey because of the Olympic Games. So like, I'm a testament to that. Like, I didn't watch hockey because I didn't understand it, but I was cheering on Team USA and I started learning the rules. Like, I'm sure a lot of people are like that. But
yeah, I'm all for the Olympics. Like, I've been screaming for the rooftops for them to bring back the Olympics. I mean, the thing, it's every 4 years, so it's not like it's like a big like hurdle to come across if you're a player.
I haven't gotten into, not once, the World Baseball Classic. Like, for baseball,
really?
I don't know why. It does nothing for me.
Even this last one, like the Shohei Ohtani trout thing, that was pretty cool. And then like, what was it? I don't know, forget the Adam Jones catch, but like
It just feels like fake Olympics.
I
I can't get there. I don't know.
That's kind of where I'm at with the Four Nations a little bit this year too. It's like, I'm just.
Oh, you guys are party poopers. We're moving on. Jesus criminy. Pour yourself a cocktail and get over it. All right. that was Coast to Coast, brought to you by our sponsors at DraftKings. Our next sponsorship is going to be with Game Time. If you're going to be buying tickets with Game Time, I know people are going to be like, hey, man, Kings are coming back to LA. We got to look at the games. We got to see what tickets are priced at. Game Time is where it's at. And I really like Game Time. I'm looking at tickets here. I'm actually trying to get some of the coworkers into hockey. So I've been looking up Dallas Stars tickets, and I'm seeing, hey, what's the best deals? What teams are coming in that I can get some deals there. And you can do the same thing for the LA Kings. So they can sort it by super deal. You can sort it by your view. So like, what seats do you want to see? Like how low? What are the price points? There's a bunch of different features. And my favorite feature is when they throw in the fees already. So you don't have to like, oh man, I found a steal of a ticket. You go to checkout. Hey, why is my checkout over $200, $300 more because of all these fees? You know that right up front. Game Time Picks curates more for you based on what you're liking to do, where you're at, and where you live. So maybe you can catch a concert that you didn't know was happening, or a comedy show. Toggling through all the features, all in pricing, like I mentioned. The seat views, lowest price guarantee. And the best thing is that you have one of the most flexible customer service policies in the ticketing industry. So let's take all the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download Game Time app right now. Create a code THPN for 20% off your first purchase. That's Game Time code THPN for 20% off your first purchase. Terms apply. What time is it? Game time. Well, everyone knows what time it is now. I don't know, Joe, if you have a tinfoil hat as well, but I'm going to be checking mine out. It's tinfoil hat segment. We're ready to go here. So as the graphic shows, we're going to be putting this on, and your boy, Rando Commando's getting the tinfoil hat on because we got some trades to talk about. It's that type of season. I think we got a big doozy here that Russ wants to talk about, I think, and it's got a lot of smoke coming from Vancouver. So I'm going to put the graphic up on here. This is a projected trade. Russ, you want to lead us into why you came up with this style of trade?
Yeah, I was kind of tinkering around with some things, and yeah, it's like thinking like, how can we bring this up? And of course, how could I forget? We have one of our favorite segments that's rapidly growing to become one of the fans' favorite segments too, the tinfoil hat, where we could talk about nonsense and trades and whatnot and have some fun. So yeah, I mean, with all the smoke and mirrors, and I was watching that Vancouver game, and the Canucks, like I think Joe had already mentioned, like they just need a trade already. JT Miller just isn't working out there for whatever reason. I think he got benched for a little bit during the game too. I've actually always been a big fan of JT Miller. I feel like he's a player that maybe gets misunderstood at times. But I understand like he's very overbearing, it seems, and a type of player that just really wants to win and is not afraid to get in his teammates' faces about it, and maybe be a little bit too honest with his words at times. I was thinking like, man, like if you look at this Kings team and the type of player that they might need to kind of get them over the hump and maybe win a playoff series, I would think maybe JT Miller would be that type of player. So I was kind of looking around, just kind of tinkering, and like maybe like what would be that kind of like, how would that trade work? And you kind of look at the Kings team and their salary cap situation right now. Of course, there's a lot of no trade clauses and no movement clauses tied to players. Trevor Moore is really the only forward that kind of I think doesn't have one. But I was looking, I was like, like what if like you did like if you're a Rob Blake and you went up to like a Phil Deneau or like a Kevin Fiala and like asked them like, hey, like what would be your thoughts on like waiving your no move clause, your no trade clause to make that kind of move, and like, hey, who knows? Maybe they said yeah and they were up for it or whatnot. So like maybe you made like a trade for like a Kevin Fiala for JT Miller and kind of see how that kind of works out, and you add JT Miller to play on the wing, who's been comfortable playing on the center or the wing position. So I was just kind of tinkering around to see how that would work, because I thought like, with all the problems that Vancouver is going, got going on right now, I wouldn't mind if LA maybe just kind of check the waters and see how things were going. Maybe they make a move up there. Who knows?
I mean, I love the idea. I think JT Miller checks a lot of boxes for what LA would certainly want, especially when you consider he's right-handed and he's outstanding. He is right-handed, right? Did I get that right? Yeah, he's
I think he
right-handed.
is.
Sometimes I confuse him
No,
with
he's a
somebody
lefty.
else.
He's a lefty.
Why did I think he was right-handed? Anyways, really good at the power play, but can play multiple positions. But I don't know. I guess, I'll just say, setting aside the fact that I think there's like a 0% chance that the LA and Vancouver makes a trade of this magnitude, but I just like Kevin Fiala. Now, maybe from a fit standpoint, Miller fits better than Fiala does in LA. I can see that, but I would not make the trade that was on the board with Fiala first and third for Miller. I just don't know. I don't think I would do that.
I think the one thing that did, Miller is like 10th among all NHL players in power play points since 2021.
Yeah, he's good.
So you do get that aspect. We have to talk about too, like I think I mentioned a little bit, his kind of locker room problems, it seems like. I feel like, I don't want to say they are maybe talked about a little too much, but I'm sure it certainly seems like it is kind of an issue. But it feels like it's kind of like the opposite of like the PL Dubois issue, where Dubois was kind of like that type of player that just seemed like he didn't care, whereas Miller seems like the player that just cares too much and is willing to just kind of get in your teammate's face and talk about it. So that's why I was like, man, like this team, like, and it's tough because the Kings, like you kind of look at some of the trades that they might have to make to bring in like talent to kind of put them over the hump. And it'd be tough to kind of put that type of player in this locker room that seems like it's so tight right now. I mean, you look at how like all those like post-game pictures with the driver of the game and how like Fogle and who's been seems like he's assimilated himself so well and so quickly into this team, and even Edmondson and Burrows, like I've talked to like players and they've talked about how like seems like these type of players and their personality has really helped elevate the locker room and the culture that's built into that. So it'd be hard to kind of make that type of move where you'd have to ship some money out, whether it be Kevin Fiala or Phil Deneau or Trevor Moore, in order to bring in more established talent. Because that's where like I was just kind of like tinkering around, and I was having fun with the Kevin Fiala one on certain trades or whatnot. But I mean, you can even add like a Phil Deneau, who I believe has a modified no trade clause. Trevor Moore, who I mentioned, doesn't have a no trade clause, so that would be a player. But then, like I like talk about, you're tinkering with that room and maybe creating a problem in a room that doesn't have one right now, and it's probably one of the better traits of this team at the moment.
Tell you what, though, I wouldn't mind seeing Fiala play with Elias Pettersson.
Okay,
if I'm being honest.
Do you think Vancouver actually would trade Pettersson?
No, I'm going to say no. I guess I don't. I guess anything's possible, but yeah. I would think no. Well,
you quoted their GM. He said those exact words. Anything is possible.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So yeah, who knows? But it seems like Miller's the one who's going to be out the door.
It does, especially when he just got benched, and I think Turcotte had some things to say about him. And not to say that Pettersson has had to lighten it up either, but are you hitching your wagon to Vancouver? I suspect isn't looking to rebuild or retool. They're looking to make playoffs and be a playoff team from now on, for the foreseeable future. And obviously Miller helps that, but between the two, Pettersson's he's 7 years younger than JT Miller, something like that. So I think it has to be Pettersson. You just signed him to a massive deal. And I think that's what makes this trade. This is the type of trade, though, I think Vancouver would try to make, is you got to get impact coming back, because this team doesn't want to rebuild. Now, there's a lot of buzz earlier today, Randon, maybe you're going to get to it, about the Devils and JT Miller. be an intriguing. Now that's an intriguing spot. I mean, I just love that for the Devils. That would be such a good move, depending on what they give up. But they've got a couple of young right shot puck moving defensemen that Vancouver is like dying for because they have nobody after Quinn Hughes.
Well, that's where I would like to go with us. Like, if it's not Fiala, what could we offer to get JT Miller? Because as much as we want to talk about the Devils, we're a Kings podcast. Like, where is the tinfoil hat for us at this point? So if it's not Fiala, is it a Deneau and Spence and a first gets it done? Like, they get a puck moving defenseman and Spence. So to alleviate some of that, they do get a shutdown defensive forward at that point. And then, they get a first out of it that they can also use to make another move at that point. Does that get something done to get the cancer out of the locker room? Or do they believe that they can get the most out of Trevor Moore, and the Trevor Moore's the more of the piece that they want? Like, I think Spence would have to be the additional piece if you downgraded from Fiala in order to get that deal done, because that's what Vancouver so desperately needs is offensive forwards or offensive defensemen.
I don't know. I feel like if I'm Vancouver, I'm not looking for anything probably less than a player like Kevin Fiala. Because like Joe said, they're not looking to be worse after this move. So they're trying to get better. And if you add, like, as much as maybe Kings fans and us like players like Phil Deneau and Trevor Moore and Jordan Spence, you can add all three of those players together, and you're probably not getting the value you're getting out of JT Miller just in that one player. So I think they're probably looking for that more high-end, even if it is young talent, because I know Joe was kind of getting toward the Devils, where they're talking about sending you players like Dawson Mercer and Simon Nemec, who was a second overall pick. Like, that's like, okay, you're getting there with a possible trade. And where Vancouver, I feel like, doesn't come out on the short end of the stick there with losing a player like JT Miller. So if I'm the Kings, or if I'm Vancouver and it just happens to be the Kings, I mean, yeah, I'd probably start with the Kevin Fiala, because if you're talking Trevor Moore, if I'm Alvin, I'm asking Brant Clark, and this is a secondary piece there.
I just don't think that this happens. Like, I don't think Vancouver trades JT Miller within the division.
Do you think they do a 1-for-1? Because I know you added that first there, Russ, and that's kind of where I'm out on the trade, is the first additional, because as you can see there, they're not, their stats are pretty much the same in different areas, or for most areas. Actually, Fiala's better in a lot of areas, and he's younger. Like, would it be JT Miller because he has a higher cap? I guess the cap hit's kind of roughly the same. Would it be JT Miller and maybe a second for Fiala and a third? Or, like, is that like where the Kings upgrade in picks because the Vancouver is getting the younger player? Or do you feel like JT Miller's his stats this year aren't indicative of his play because the team's playing so badly?
I don't know. I feel like JT Miller, yeah, he had 100+ points last year. Like I mentioned, the power play stats, but I don't know. Like, we'd be just kind of throwing darts here, trying to figure it out. I think, I don't know. Like, if it's just a 1-for-1 switch, I don't know if Vancouver would even want to do that. They feel like they could probably get better value. And like Joe said, like, as fun as this was the experiment I was having, it'd be tough and hard pressed to see if they do trade in the division. But there are also other players in Vancouver that other people have mentioned that we haven't talked about yet. And one of them is Brock Besser, and that's a UFA after this season. And I was just reading an article about him. What would be your guys'? I mean, I don't know how familiar with you guys are with Besser. Obviously, he scored 40 goals, I believe, just last year. I know Kings fans are really high on him. He is that right shot. Or you guys maybe more higher on a Besser move than a player like Miller?
I mean, I think that trade, if we're talking about Miller Besser, I mean, I think the Besser one makes more sense, just because of the acquisition cost is going to be much. I would think going to be less than like you're not going to cost Fiala to go get Brock Besser. again, I don't know what that is from a Vancouver standpoint, because I don't see them just selling. They have to get something back in return, and I don't know what that is. And that's what
Do you
makes
think they're buying at all costs? Like, I mean, we're talking about the trade deadlines at the end of February. What if they're out of it with how bad they're playing? What if they're out of it?
I don't think they're going to be out of it, though. I guess if they are, then sure, then they would. I think I don't think they sell. Like, I think the trade for assuming it's JT Miller, that's just out of necessity, because it's just gotten so bad there that they have to make a decision there. And maybe maybe they lose a little bit in that deal and then go do work elsewhere to make up for that loss. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I see them being aggressive and see them trying to make playoffs, especially because, as Russ said earlier, I don't think Calgary does a lot, and I don't think St. Louis does a lot. I think they're comfortable to stand pat here and see what happens. Where Vancouver, I think they need to be aggressive, and I think they will be. So yeah, that's why I kind of think they need to do something like now to steady this ship a little bit. And if it means getting JT Miller out, which is kind of crazy to think that they're going to make themselves better, but if in the short term they can stop this bleeding a little bit, then maybe. But I don't think they're going to be out of it by the deadline.
If they trade JT Miller, I don't know. I don't see how they get any better.
I don't think they win that trade. I don't think they're going to win that trade. They can make it. Maybe it would require a second trade to like refill the roster, right?
I mean, maybe they get better because like it would improve the locker room probably. So there's that. But I mean, on the ice, even if you get a player like Dawson Mercer and Simone Nemec, like you're not going to be better off for it. But
not this year,
maybe. Yeah, not this year. Yeah, I mean, Mercer's a young player. Nemec obviously a young player too. So you have a little bit more runway with those players compared to Miller. Maybe they get along with Pettersson a little bit more. I don't know. I've never been a big fan of Pettersson, to be honest with you.
Stop it.
Like he's got no dog in him. He's got none whatsoever. Like it just seems like Miller's just kind of like alpha, like being the alpha guy in the locker room, and Pettersson's just kind of on the side, like who's got more skill, more like obviously. I'm not gonna say that like he's not a good player because he's a great player, but he needs to like I'm you could see like what's happening there. It's Miller is just trying to light a fire under Pettersson, and Pettersson's just not responding to a point where Miller's probably just biting Pettersson, trying to get him going, and it's just not working. So it's just so weird because they went to Game 7 with the Oilers last year, and now they just look like a shell of themselves at the moment. It's strange.
Russ, you wanted to bring up a few other names. Let's start entertaining some other trades here, my man.
Well, to be more realistic, I think some people would ask me like what names I think of, and like a few names come to mind. Kyle Palmieri out of out on the island. I believe he's 33, right shot forward. Familiar with Jim Hiller, obviously, with Jim Hiller being the assistant coach in New York a few years ago. So there's that aspect of it. A veteran player who's experienced in the playoffs. And I feel like he's the type of player that would be willing to play that kind of structured system that the Kings play. So yeah, I mean, if I guess there's like a player to put on the top of my trade board, that would probably be one of them, because you look at the Kings right now, and we talked about the defensive side. It seems fine. Goaltending obviously seems fine with Kemper. So, I mean, if they are looking to upgrade, the forward position would probably be what they're looking to upgrade. I mean, just kind of the way that the power play has been working, it just hasn't been clicking. So I don't know if you maybe look for another weapon, even though if you do trade for somebody, I don't know who kind of takes the spot of from the top unit, because you already have Fiala, Byfield, Kopitar, Kempe, and probably Drew Doughty on there. Who are you going to bring in that's going to take one of those a spot from one of those players? So it is what it is. But I think if you add another depth piece like a Kyle Palmieri, I mean, I think that's probably an improvement over a player like Laferriere, even as much as I like him. Not to say that you take Laferriere out of the lineup, but I mean, if you're able to slide Laferriere down and have Palmieri play with like a Deneau and Moore as opposed to LaFerriere there in that spot, I think that would be a little bit of an improvement.
I'm with you on Palmieri. I think he's a solid addition for a team. Like, understanding like what expectations are, but I think he's somebody that can finish. I agree. I don't know if he ultimately takes anybody's spot on the first unit. I don't think he'd be too costly, although we did talk about earlier that at least at the moment, I don't know how many sellers there are. And, that could drive up a price on Kyle Palmieri. And what I'd really like to have right now is a second round pick. That would be nice to have for a guy like Kyle Palmieri. Although I guess I don't know what the asking price is going to be, but we don't really have one of those. So I'm not opposed to Palmieri, Russ. I think that's a fine shout.
I mean,
There's not a lot out there.
New York's cupboard is bare for their prospects, and not that we have a lot because we were ranked 26th this year. But I mean, could you see? I mean, like, would a Pinelli be enough to, in like a third, be enough to get a Palmieri who's on an expiring deal?
That's the thing. I don't know. I don't know what any LA prospect outside of Green Tree and Carter George or some of these. I don't know that the Pinellis or the Chromiacs have. I don't know what value they have.
Yeah.
I don't. That's a good question, Brandon. I don't know.
And most of these teams, when they're trying to make a trade like this, they're looking more draft picks because they get their choice on the prospect that they want. And even though, I mean, who knows? They could be higher, obviously, on some Kings prospects than maybe other teams are. But I think, I don't know if you trade like a first round. I don't even know if the Kings would want to trade their first round pick. It's not something I'd be against. Like if the Kings are looking to upgrade their team and looking to win, like we all expect them to be, I wouldn't be against them trading their first round pick. I think that would be something that they should look into doing. So, yeah, but does a player like Palmieri require a first round pick to get? I don't think so. So that's why like Joe's hits it around the nose. Like it would be nice to have that second round pick to see maybe a little bit sweeter there, but they have their second round pick, I believe, next year, 2026.
Yeah.
So there's that.
Okay, let me ask you a question. Like, I know everybody talks about right shot, top six. I think everybody that's obvious. Do you think there's any shot, and this might sound crazy, but do you think there's any shot that they acquire a defenseman? The only reason I say that is because A, it's the Kings. B, will they trust Spence, Clark, Moverari in a playoff series, or will they look to bring in a veteran?
I think they do trust Clark.
I think they trust Clark. I don't know if they trust Moverara, just because.
Are they going to play what 10?
Haven't. But it's funny. I was watching the Vancouver game, and like I was thinking to myself, like as soon as I saw him on the ice, I was like, we're going to be here a month from now and Derek Forbert's going to be on the Kings again. Like that's like, I was thinking the same thing, Joe. Like I wouldn't put it past Blake if he's looking to maybe upgrade Moverara or Spence. Like, we've gotten to the point, like how many years has it been that we've been waiting for them to show Moverara some consistent playing time, and he's actually getting it. Like, is that actually going to continue into the playoffs?
Right.
I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure he's even going to stay on the ice when Doughty's back. I could see Burrows just taking it just because they like the unmeasurables that they've talked about in the past. So, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if that does happen.
Just something I thought about.
Well, is there any other names out there you guys want to talk about?
There's a name in Pittsburgh, Ricard Raquel. I've always sort of kind of been a fan of the player, but he's just perpetually underwhelmed. So I don't know what type of asset I'm willing to trade for him because I don't know that he's the piece that necessarily gets them over the top. But I mention him because he's a right shot. Like the players that I think that the Kings really need to be having conversations with Buffalo to see what are we talking about? What are the costs? Yeah. What does the deal look like for a Dylan Cousins or for an Alex Tuck? What do those look like? I think those are more the conversations that that they should be having. Those are guys that are a little bit more impactful that could actually help you. They could actually help you get over a hump in the first round. They could actually be players that can be inserted on that first unit. Both right shot, both can play the top 6, middle 6. Cousins can play center in the wing. They're obviously in a horrible situation right now in Buffalo. I'm calling about those two guys right now. And I just to see what the price is right now. I don't know what Buffalo's waiting for to make a deal. I guess at this point it's just too late, but I think they've got to do something.
What do you think Tuck would cost? I mean, you have $5 million, so does Buffalo carry some of that money, or do you have to send back Trevor Moore to get this deal done?
And I don't know. I feel like you don't see that a lot. Those kind of hockey trades, if you will, like a player like Moore going in a deal like this. And I don't know that LA has what it takes. If Buffalo's going to eat money, I don't know that LA has the pieces to get a deal like that done. Because what's Tuck got left on his deal?
2 years at $475. It looks like
He's got one more year after this year. Yeah.
Okay. And so I don't know. You're probably looking at a first. Does Buffalo could use what they don't have is right shot defenseman. I don't know if Jordan Spence is somebody that interests them, something like that. But I don't know. Those are the names.
Would you trade your first round pick for Alex Tuck?
I don't think Alex Tuck makes the Kings a cup contender. So I'm going to say no. But I think there's a team that should. Like if I'm Colorado, for example, or, and I don't know their pick status or any of these, like I know Vegas is the one that traded them, but these teams that are like legit contenders, I would do that. If I'm Colorado or Dallas, Edmonton, any of those teams, if they could, but the Kings, I just don't know that I think the value is fair. I just don't know that the Kings, I don't know if he puts them over the top.
But why to trade it first? Does he have to make the team a cup contender, or does he have to just help us get later in the playoffs? And then he's not a rental. He's there for next season. As you mentioned before we started this podcast, the cap is going to go up. So the team could potentially not even have to move salary out if the cap goes up next season. You know what I mean? So I don't know. First and Moore would be the person that you would use to even out the cap. So, and then obviously Tuck is a better player than Moore, in my opinion, at least this season. So does Moore in a prospect or Moore in a first, not a four or first, but Moore in a third get it done? Probably not.
No, yeah, that's the thing. Like if I'm Buffalo and they're trading Tuck, they're gonna want a first and they're gonna get a first.
Yeah.
So then how do the Kings make the
trade a first for him?
What's that?
For Vegas. Because Vegas is gonna do something at the deadline. They always do. They figure out a way to move the money and bring in a big piece. It's gonna happen. So
that's what I'm looking to do if I'm Vancouver. I'm trying to do something like that with JT Miller, is talk to Buffalo, try to bring over an Alex Tuck or a Dylan Cousins and try to swing a deal like that. That Buffalo gets a veteran that they don't have that guy. They don't have that alpha in Buffalo. They've been starving for that. And they
have plenty of puck moving defense though.
Yes, they do.
Yeah, and Vancouver could use one of those too.
Yes, they could.
If I'm the King, Cousins would be excellent. I would love Dylan Cousins. If the Kings can figure out a way to get a Deneau for Cousins swap,
the first there makes more. I'm doing the first for Cousins all day.
Yeah, I mean, he's still got 6 more years at like $7 million. I mean, he's a great player, strong nose player. I feel like the type of player that would be great to put with like a Turcotte or a LaFerriere.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
You fit in just fine in LA.
So why
you're
does
kinda
Buffalo?
solidifying
Why are you
a little-
saying that? Sorry, why are you saying that Buffalo would make that trade since they just signed him? Why is he
I
a
think
player that's being mentioned?
There's been some smoke around him and around that team now because something's got to change there with Buffalo.
That's
It's
just it. Something's got to
Yeah.
change. And
because they're getting all, like you talked about, they have so many good young defensemen that are great, and they have a lot of good young up front too. Yuri Kulich, another one, JJ Paterka, Cousins that we just talked about. So yeah, there's a lot of talent, but they can't figure it out. So like I know that they have a little bit of PTSD from trading players like Eichel and Reinhardt and all these good young talents. So I'm sure, I don't know if they're eager to do it again, but I mean, yeah, if I'm the Kings and I see a player like Dylan Cousins become available, then yeah, that's what I'm going after, because he kind of fits right in with that timeline of young players that are on the Kings right now with like Turcotte, Byfield, even Mikey Anderson, Ferriere. Like that's like a fun wave of young talent you could build around. Like I would trade. I would pay a hefty price for a player like Dylan Cousins.
And in Buffalo, I think the reason is they just, if that team could use, like if they still had Ryan O'Reilly, for example, on that team, that could probably have helped them this way. He could help bring along some of these young guys because they don't really have a impactful veteran. Tuck is the closest thing they got.
Yeah. And that's what they've been missing. I mean, Jason Zucker, look at the points he's been putting up this year. He's like, I think he's leading their team in goals. Yeah. And like he's being that guy, and he shouldn't be. He shouldn't be that guy. He's like a third tier scorer on a good team, and he's been their legitimate top scorer. It's wild. Buffalo. Did you see Mike Harrington's tweet, by the way?
Which one?
Like, he just said, "This is he said, "This is disgraceful." After the game today, they lost.
Nedeljkovic scored. Yeah.
So Cousins for what? Dano and a 1.
Not
enough.
I think you're talking more like Jordan Spence and a 1.
Well, you got to make the money work this year.
I guess if you got it, yeah.
Yeah, it'd have to be like Dano, a 1, Spence, and I still don't even know if that works. I mean, at least.
Or do you think it's going to be like Dano, Green Tree, and a 1? Would have to be what it would be.
Right.
Maybe. Yeah, we're getting there.
Because I don't think I don't know that the Kings prospects are really all that valuable outside of Green Tree.
Or what about one of our hockey studs or goalie studs, Carter George or Hampton?
Yeah. I mean, I'm trading a goalie for Cousins all day.
Mm-hmm. I would do it.
So instead of the Green Tree. So,
but remember,
so
Buffalo's got UPL, Buffalo's got Devin Levi. So
they traded us Portillo.
Yeah, they already traded Portillo. So I don't know that they're looking to bring in a goalie.
True. Do you think one of the goalie prospects would be a good trade chip this offseason? Or not this offseason, but this trade deadline?
Well, I mean, I say yes. I don't know. You have to ask other GMs, but yeah, I say yes.
Yeah, I'm sure Carter George is probably high on a lot of people's radars. Kings, I don't know if the Kings should trade him. Slakinski, I don't know how high he is on people's radars. He's a middle round pick, so it's not like as high as we probably are on him. He's still a goalie prospect, so it is what it is. But yeah, I don't know if that really entices GMs to trade, to make a deal. I think like you're talking like Green Tree, like first. Green Tree and a first and Dano for Cousins would probably be like the starting point for any GM, or at least for Kevin Adams.
Because Kings are going to end up with Craig Smith is what they're going to end up with from Chicago.
Tufo Moto here, or Momo comes in here. It says Evangelista from Nashville could be fun. What do you guys think about that?
I mentioned him a few weeks ago. Yes. Nashville's interesting, although there was a time when Evangelista wasn't really getting consistent playing time. I don't know if that's still a thing. Because he's another one. He's still young, though. He's only 22. He's an RFA after this year. So there's no need for Nashville to really deal him because he's under team control. So I agree. He would be fun. I'm interested.
Yeah, I don't know what
I'll move Vara for an Evangelista. Get some value from Tuna.
I don't know what Nashville's thinking right now. I feel like they're just going to chalk up this season to kind of just being a loss and just
So I'm not trading Evangelista if I'm them. That's for sure.
Because I mean they're already kind of handcuffed with. I mean, you look at their roster and there's like 10 players, like 13 players that are over 30. So it's like they need to keep their young talent because they're.
Yeah.
I mean, if they want to be good, they're probably not going to keep recouping that cupboard. So. This will probably be the only year to do it. But after this, like they need to win with the contracts and the players that they have on that team. Like it has to start. Those wins have to start coming in.
Well, what's been coming in is our views here tonight. I want to thank our fans for sticking with us. We are calling it quits at an hour 45. Before on your way out, please hit that like button. It helps all the algorithms. So just do a little and help us out there. Find all of our articles at hockeyroyalty.com. Thank you to our sponsors at DraftKings and Game Time, where anywhere you want to bet or buy tickets for your favorite sporting events. Man, the season is heating up. We're going to be getting the Drewster back here pretty soon. Teams playing some good hockey, trying to push for that home field advantage. And as we get closer and closer to the trade deadline, there will be more and more tinfoil hats worn for you guys. So thank you so much. And as always on this podcast, go Kings go.